Welcome back to Exposed. With us in studio is Kayreen Cross from the Kettering Memorial Hospital Center and Taryn Connellan from KSCS. So, what are some of the things that you do at the hospital, and you also work at KSS? And
Yeah, I'm a community health nurse. So my first role was with school health at KSS, and I've also recently become one of the Well Baby Clinic nurses. So I work with teenagers, babies. I also work in the outpatient clinic with all ages.
And Taryn, what's your role at KSCS?
At KSCS, I'm a support worker, so I mostly work with community members that come in requesting support for various things, but I work mostly with women and children that have issues maybe with like healthy sexuality, relationships, stress, all kinds of stuff.
So if either of you can comment on what are some of the statistics for Aboriginal teen pregnancy compared to the general population?
Well, we don't really have any numbers, but in general, if you look at Aboriginal populations compared to the general population, the teen pregnancy rate's 4 times higher. So that's quite a jump compared to the average person. And if you also look at the average age, for Aboriginal people, it's 19 for them to have their first child compared to the general population where they're 26. So that's also quite a big gap as well.
And how do you think the issue of teen pregnancy is in Kahnawake specifically?
I would say that the birth rate in Kahnawake has been going up over the past few years. We don't quite know what the reason is. There's kind of a little bit of a baby boom. It does seem that we have a younger childbearing population, so there are younger mothers than I would think outside of Kahnawake. And some of those do tend to be teenagers. So teenagers would be considered, 19 and under in terms of like statistics. But I mean, as you know, adolescents are considered up to like 24 years old sometimes. So I would say that we have a young mother and father population in Kahnawake right now.
So in both your professional opinions, why do you think that teens choose to actually give birth to the child instead of taking another way out, I guess, adoption or abortion or anything like that?
Well, I think the social stigma of having a baby as a teenager is not the same as it was years ago when women used to give their babies up for adoption. So I don't even really think it's much of an option for people in town to give their babies up for adoption. We don't hear about the girls who decide to have abortions because, there's no MTV show that's like 16 and I had an abortion. It's all 16 and I'm pregnant. So we don't really know what the numbers are, but in my experience just working within the community, and I would say that there's as many girls who choose to have abortions rather than to have a baby. But I guess that, for them, the decision might rest on that they don't think they're ready, that they don't think they have the support. So I think one of the reasons that people do choose to have their baby in town is that they might have family support, that it's not looked at as, necessarily a bad thing once people kind of get over the shock of, oh my God, she's having a baby, or then it becomes almost a joyful thing. People embrace babies as a gift. So I think that's probably part of the reason.
With that said, in your opinion, do you know what some of the reasons are for getting pregnant in the first place? Is it more complicated than just not knowing how contraceptives work?
I think there's a lot of variables on why teens get pregnant. I don't think there's one answer. Like Kayreen said, like one of the biggest things is there's not a social stigma about it. So if they do get pregnant, it's a lot easier to keep it because you do have family or extended family support. I think one of the other reasons why a lot of teens might get pregnant is because they have that teen mentality where they think, it's not going to happen to me. There's all the issues. Some teens might want to get pregnant because they love their boyfriend and they want to like maybe try to hold on to him or him to her or some. I don't think there's any one answer. I think another big problem is in Kahnawake you're surrounded by a French-spoken province, And I think it's often difficult to look at employment or anything unless you learn French. And so a lot of times it might be an easier route for a teen to choose to raise children for basically their career than to, go through all the struggles of having to learn French, having to fit into an outside society.
You work as a nurse at KSS also?
Yes.
What are some of the most common questions or concerns that students come to you about sex or pregnancy?
I think teens are, really worried that they might get pregnant. And I think one of the big issues is that they're not preparing themselves to have sex. They're going into it without thinking about it, so they might not have condoms available, they might not be on birth control, and they're coming to me after the fact asking, do you think I can be pregnant? What do I need to do to protect myself? Where they should have been thinking of it before, but like Taryn said, teenagers, they do have that mentality that things won't happen to them. So that would be one of the most frequent questions that I get, that somebody's worried or that they want to go on some kind of birth control. So I usually try to, help them make the best decision for themselves.
Do you think sex ed is an effective way to reduce teen pregnancy?
Well, I mentioned it before to you guys privately, but one of the big issues that I think needs to happen is that I think that parents need to talk to their kids at home. The schools can't be everywhere, and the schools can't provide everything. I think that the studies have shown that kids who have parents and have an open relationship with them, they have a less likely chance to have sex earlier, they have a less higher risk of becoming pregnant, and they tend to use protection more often their first time than kids who don't have parents who talk to them. So for me, that's one of the big things that I think people have to realize in the community, is that you have to talk to your kids, because a lot of the problems in town stem from parents not talking to their kids about stuff. So in the school, we do talk to the kids about prevention. It actually starts in grade 5 when the nurses do classes on puberty and talk about their bodies and sort of get them realizing that there's things going on in their bodies. And by the time they hit grade 7 and 8, by grade 8, I'm already talking about contraception and preventing pregnancy and STIs.
With the teen pregnancy, I guess with teenagers in general becoming sexually active at younger ages, do you think that the sex ed needs to start earlier than grade 5, or?
I think, unfortunately, teens and just people today in general are exposed to sex media at a very young age. So I think it's important that parents start talking to their children about sexuality at a very young age, but make sure it's age appropriate. Like, you don't want to start talking to a child that's not ready to hear about condoms when they're only like 4 or 5. You talk to their age group, but I think it's important for parents to start that conversation with them so that kids know that if they have questions about sexuality, they can come to them and let them know that it's normal and it's a part of everyday life, and it starts at birth till death.
And, I understand what you're saying, like a parent should talk to their kids, but what if, I don't know, say maybe you don't have the type of parents who are comfortable with that kind of thing, outside of the home, say at schools and stuff, is there any type of prevention measures that they take? Like, is there condoms available for them if they choose to have sex, or you know what I mean, like that type of
I can't speak for other schools, but I do know that most schools do have a school nurse available, whether it's like myself, I'm in the school a couple of days a week, or if it's a CLSE nurse who goes in. But there are definitely condoms available to students, and kids, they tend to like to play with them but really I have no problem with that. If they're just curious and they want to see, what is it all about, I really have no problem giving, someone a condom. Usually I give it when they're 14 and older, because 14 is the age of consent where they can talk to me without me having to get permission from their parents. So usually I try to stick to that, but there's definitely condoms available. Condoms are available on prescription to anybody who's covered under non-insured health benefits plans. So they can also access condoms that way. We have a school-based clinic at KSS where the kids can actually come and see a doctor if they wish. And, it can be anything but a lot of the issues do tend to be around contraception. So.
And do you have any last advice for the youth of Kahnawake about sex and just
teen pregnancy.
Yeah, and teen pregnancy in general?
Well, I think maybe stop thinking that it won't happen to you. Start thinking about preparing yourself. Because if you're thinking about having sex, you should be thinking about where are my condoms, whether you're a girl or a guy. And it shouldn't be left up to the girl to make that decision about whether she goes on birth control or not. It should be the two together. And, really always use condoms.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. We're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be back with more Exposed. The show is brought to